Happy Thursday, everyone.
Hello, happy Thursday. Hi, Lee.
Hi, Commissioner Wilson. I hope you all enjoyed your Labor Day weekend. We have some exciting updates during Commissioner Wilson's virtual office hours.
Yay. I don't know about you guys, but I loved having the extra day, but then it totally goosed me up for the rest of the week. I'm like, wait, what day is it? I thought it was Tuesday. Oh, it's Wednesday. Oh, it's Thursday. So I feel like it's just zoomed by, and it always does zoom by, but especially on a short week.
I'm in a perpetual state of checking the date because I never know what day it is. It's just like juggling all the time.
And as it turns out, time flies, whether you're having fun or not. So, we just keep trying to find fun. We'll just keep working on fun.
Awesome. Well, you had a huge bump up in your followership this past week.
Yay,
so welcome.
Oh my gosh, I love it. You know that we've been hanging out for a while now and that we can actually literally synchronize our thoughts.
Welcome. And we could sing too. If you
I'm not singing. I love you all too much to do that to you.
Just so you know, these virtual office hours are Commissioner Wilson's opportunity to update you on what's going on behind the scenes and also share updates from any community partners. If you have any questions, you can drop them directly in the comment box, or you can email district1@ocfl.net.
Yeah, so it's crazy to think that a year ago, August 18th, I was duly elected by the wonderful citizens of Orange County. And one of the first things that I said, well, actually, even while I was running, that I felt was critical coming into this office was transparency and accessibility. And so we are, obviously very busy, but we want to make sure you're heard. And this is an opportunity for us to connect in a way that we wouldn't have been able to do, 15 years ago. So we're trying to take advantage of as many opportunities as possible to connect with you. So yes, please stay in touch.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
We all wanted the COVID conversation to go away.
Oh, every week.
But unfortunately, it dipped really, really low a couple months ago, and now things are just spiking back up.
That Delta variant is the real deal. And we've lost so many Floridians, Orange County residents. It's devastating. I'm hopeful that we have hit that peak. We do have a press conference here in Orange County. It'll be shortly following this. So if you've tuned in for this Facebook Live, please go to the Orange County website, or we will also live stream the mayor's press conference. I'll be going downstairs for that to get the most recent numbers. But the county is continuing to test, to vaccinate, and to try to really encourage people to be conscientious of their neighbors, and in areas where you may be in close proximity, mask. There's no harm in it. I've gotten right back to putting mine on before going in the grocery store, and if I'm going to go to a restaurant and I'm walking through, a group of people, because I don't know who is and who isn't anymore, and there are a group of people under the age of 12 that can't get vaccinated yet. So if there's anything we can do to help keep the people who have no choices safe right now, we have to do it.
Yeah. And, I know we've had a lot of constituents reach out, basically questioning mask mandates and questioning the vaccine policy.
Yeah.
Just so you know, just look at the ICU. Look at the ICU numbers and how overwhelmingly people that are unvaccinated are taking up the ICU beds, and even, putting beds in cafeterias to serve people right now.
I think it's interesting because I've received quite a bit of communication from people who are very angry about what they feel like is an infringement upon their rights. And they say the right to my bodily integrity, the right to my body, my choice. And my response to that is, you're exactly right. If you don't want to get vaccinated, you don't have to get vaccinated, but then don't come to me. Don't come into my office. Don't come into my business. Don't go into my kid's classroom.
Or the grocery store.
So because your rights stop when the potential of hurting someone else's start. So that's why you don't have the right to drive 300 miles per hour. That's why you don't have the right to just, blindly go swinging your fists through a crowd. Because even though you have the right to make whatever movements you want to in the privacy of your home and in your realm, once you've engaged the public, you have a duty and a responsibility to other people and their rights. So, that rights thing, it's not about anyone forcing you to have a vaccination. You don't have to have a vaccination. You don't have to wear a mask, but then stay home.
Yeah.
Stay somewhere that you're not putting other people at risk. So, because you can, if you want to put yourself at risk in any number of ways, you can do that as long as you're not putting somebody else in harm's way.
Yeah, and I just want to make the point that viruses are a living thing. You know, viruses are alive, they're mutating, they're evolving all the time, and the vaccine really helps to, you know, slow down and you know, make the transmission rate a lot less. Yeah. No, and all these new variants are coming out. The Mu variant is now being looked at, and I know we're kind of questioning whether or not booster shots are going to be available.
Booster shots are going to be available, and people who are immunocompromised, talk to your doctor, because there are already people I know for sure that are eligible, people who've been on transplant lists or have recently been received a transplant, people who have other high, you know, something that's compromising their immune system. So check with your doctor about your booster. A lot of the healthcare workers that were the first round of people to get vaccinated, their boosters are going to be coming up pretty soon, because that's been, what, 6 or 7 months. So it's coming. And listen, the reality of it is we may end up kind of wrestling with this for longer than we wanted to, because of the lack of participation or willingness for people to do the right thing. Yeah. And we really were, when you get to that 2 and 3% positivity rate where we were at our lowest, that's when you're close to pretty much eradicating. And you know, you think about the horrible, horrible diseases we've eradicated in our history because people work together as a community. And this one didn't get there because we couldn't get that community support. And it, you know, it breaks my heart. And I think that we have to continue to realize that when we talk about this, you can't talk about it as a singular entity, you, yourself, and you. It's got to be community.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, you had some data points that you wanted to share from our amazing health services department.
We are so fortunate here. And if there's ever any information that you would like us to share with you specifically, we get information from our emergency services people and our health services department that gives us snapshots of what's happening here in Orange County. I know there's been a real deficiency of information across the state from the you know, our actual state and partners, but the information we're able to get from our own health services tells us, you know, we have at the Barnett Park site, there has continued to be a very high number of people coming in for tests, which actually is a positive thing, because when we get high numbers of people testing, it tells you that people are paying attention and hopefully getting themselves out of group situations if they have a positive test. And we tested, it was something to 1,243 at the Barnett Park from Friday through Monday, which is pretty incredible. There were 4,500 around there at the econ tested, and that was at a 17% positivity rate. So the more numbers you get like that, also the more accurate you know those statistics are. Yeah. And I think here's my other thing I really want, if you're listening to this, there's a lot of information out there about various anecdotal, and I mean case study treatment for things, or you know, one-offs about people's reactions to the vaccine. I want you to do me a favor if you're watching this and dig in a little bit about what makes a study valid. Validity is a huge component of being able to take any piece of information. Statistical validity means there were enough people run through something to be able to say with confidence that this is what the outcome is. So if it's a 1 or 2 person story, is that valid? Probably not. If you have thousands and thousands, is that valid? You're getting closer. If you have a vaccine that's been taken safely by millions, you've got valid studies. So the studies are valid. There's plenty of peer review articles from well-respected institutions across the globe. So I really do think that the easiest way to combat that misinformation is to try to, you know, I always tell my my kids when they're doing their homework, cite your sources, cite your sources, cite your sources. The first citation, you know what, put it to the side, pretend you didn't even find it. Go with a second citation, find a third citation. If you can find layers of confirmation in those numbers and peer-reviewed studies, then that's science. And we've really been able, as a species, we've been able to survive some really awful things because we've got scientific procedures. So I have confidence in it. I'll be ready to take my booster when it's time. I feel grateful that, knock on wood, everyone in my family, people closest to me who I love dearly, have all also, you know, I have scientists in my family, so I have a special place in my heart for people that dedicate their lives to trying to eradicate suffering.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will have a more accurate depiction of this week's data next week at the next Thursday virtual office hours, because right after this we're going to the mayor's coronavirus update.
Yes,
at 3:30.
And we will share whatever they have as far as like media releases. They'll do a lot of times snapshots for where the mobile site's going to be. So we'll get that out.
Well, I can't help but notice that you're wearing red today.
I am.
You've got your red shoes.
Yes,
you got your red shirt.
Eradicating separate. Yes.
Tell us about that.
Okay, so the red shoes and the red shirt today are really to raise awareness in our community and in discussion with people who are in both the healthcare field and education field about something called fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. I was very ignorant about this. I knew about fetal alcohol syndrome, and I sort of thought it was an all or nothing diagnosis. Well, it turns out, like many of the things that affect development in utero or in early childhood, that it's not an all or nothing, that there is a spectrum, and that depending on the exposure to alcohol during gestational development, children can display a wide variety of symptoms that are often misdiagnosed. And we were really fortunate in Orange County to have a family that brought forward information about this spectrum disorder. They have a beautiful family, children, one of who struggles, that they try to make sure that they're getting the resources for theirs. And they had the most generous idea: let's see if we can make sure that the resources we're able to get are available to everyone, because their child was adopted, and what they realized was, had they not been in that position to adopt and to find those resources, this child would not have been identified for the type of interventions that have really made a difference in his life. So we are hoping to elevate the overall conversation. We're hoping to find some great clinical partnerships so that we can get people who wouldn't normally be able to get into those evaluations and get them identified and treated.
Yeah, if you have a story that you want to share, or if you have any questions about this, drop your questions in the chat or email district1@ocfl.net.
Yeah, I learn something new every day, Lee. It feels like that to me, learning about that is fascinating. And, I think having an awareness day where you wear a shirt so that you can talk about it and you remind everybody around you, and that's how we learn.
I mean, I did not realize how little alcohol exposure you could have during pregnancy, during times when you might not even know that you're pregnant and you're drinking and consuming alcohol.
They don't know.
That could directly impact the unborn child that you're carrying. So this is a very serious issue that probably impacts way more people than what's truly represented.
That's right, because of the sort of elusive diagnosis of some of the behaviors that fall in that spectrum.
Yeah, much later in life. Which they don't tie it to. They just think that child has behavioral challenges but then when you actually have the resources early on, you're able to pinpoint it.
That early intervention is key.
So key. So let's talk a little bit about your week. You went ahead and made a little commute over to Lake County.
Yes, so if anybody is tuning in from the far reaches of West Orange County out by the Lake County line in our beautiful Avalon rural settlement, they saw me this week. I went and they went to the Lake County Commission meeting where the McKinnon Groves subdivision was discussed and was going to be up for a vote for approval. So McKinnon Groves is a subdivision fully on the Lake County side, so it doesn't fall under my purview. And I have the greatest respect for those jurisdictional boundaries. I have, really great relationships with Lake County counterparts, but I did really want to express to them what I've heard from my residents. And as the representative for District 1, I felt like it was important to be there with them, because I know they were really struggling, trying to articulate how important it was to protect their rural way of life. And, I think it's very interesting to be part of a county commission that you become very used to the way that we go through land use cases, and then going to see how another county goes through that process. And one of the things that Lake County did very differently was that they do not have a time limit for the applicant. So if you're bringing a case forward and you're applying for a land use, a subdivision like this was in Orange County, you have 15 minutes to present your case. And then the public gets their portion of it. commissioners, the mayor they have an opportunity to ask the applicant to respond. The applicant usually reserves some time for rebuttal. And then there can be as many questions as need to happen in Orange County with staff. They can bring the applicant back up. In Lake County, the applicant doesn't have a time limit, and all these people drove from, Orange County in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon for a 1:30 start time, and the applicant's attorney, I felt like, really drew it out
to make it people are exhausted by the time that the public actually has that opportunity.
How much time can you give up as somebody who's just there as a neighbor, as a citizen, as a conservationist, as a environmental advocate? There's, your time is, the people that are doing that are getting paid in billable hours. In your time, you're losing money if you're sitting there. And so I was really proud of the Avalon Rural Settlement residents for their attendance, for their amazingly heartfelt public comments, and for their overall diligence in understanding what's at stake. This isn't a vote that comes to me, but I really feel that if the way we approve things is based on compatibility and looking at, is this compatible with the surrounding entities and the existing residents that are there, it's not compatible. You're talking about an area in rural West Orange County that is really lock solid, 1 unit per every 5 acres, or 1 unit for every 10 acres, and a unit is a house, right? Or,
where people ride their horses.
There's horses, there's
some really low speed limits typically.
There's still some sort of, smaller agricultural businesses.
Quiet way of life, peaceful.
Very quiet, it's hilly and rolling. If you've never taken a drive out there, it's really lovely. It's a beautiful, beautiful area, and understanding that Lake County has full jurisdiction to make any decision they want to across that county line, my ask was just be a good neighbor, knowing that county line isn't a wall. That will affect everybody on the Orange County side. And I say this for developments that come before the board in Orange County. I'll say it about any developments that I see anywhere in the world, that it only makes sense to have higher density housing where there are already existing infrastructure to assist that housing. So to have 600 brand new residences in an area that has no transit, there's no plan for any kind of
no hope for transit.
No hope for transit out there. There's no big employers. There's no and this chicken or egg thing about employers. It was interesting. The other part that Lake County does is they require an economic benefit in sort of this. Well, what's this going to bring as far as employers? And the applicant proposed that an agricultural business that was there would be the
economic driver, but it's already there.
It's already there, and they double dipped because they also used that to satisfy the requirement for green space or open space. So they used the same entity to check the development boxes. So there was a lot that felt like it was not necessarily within the plans that Lake County has for that area that I hope that are scrutinized. The hearing, they tabled it for now. It's a continuation, which means that the board will come back at some point for a decision. I think they wanted time to really digest what they heard, and I think there was some really very interesting and key points made on both sides. I understand that there really is the citrus industry in that area was decimated. But I also think that when we consider the replacement for agriculture, we have to remember what decimated that industry. Was it climate change? Was it our continual attack on the environment? And if that's the case, do we remedy that by continuing to attack the environment?
Yeah.
And so those are considerations that are not in front of me. They're in front of the Lake County Board, but I do hope that they see a holistic approach to this. One of the considerations was that they consider this part of a Wellness Way plan, which is this area, it's a Horizon West-ish looking development plan, but it has some very specific requirements. And one of them was 1,000 contiguous acres in order to be part of the plan as a subdivision. And they didn't meet that requirement and were given a waiver right out of the gate. So I think residents were really like, wait, how are they giving a waiver on this right out of the gate, but you're being very strict on the requirement for them to put at least 3 units per acre. So there seem to be some inconsistencies there, and I think it'll be hashed out. I have confidence that my colleagues in Lake County will take the time to really dig in and hopefully understand what's at stake, and that once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the part that I really wanted to try to bring home, is that rural landscape in Lake and Orange County. Those people, that's historic. They've been there for a long time. And if they're completely boxed in, even if we don't take their land from them, that rural landscape changes just by what it's being boxed in with. So, you know, it was an interesting thing for me to watch their processes there. And I really, really am grateful, if you're listening right now, to the residents out there for staying so plugged in and really having a heart when they talk about it, because that was very evident.
Yeah. I have a quick question. So the county line's here, this new development that's going to bring in a lot higher density than this rural areas here.
Yes.
But then there's these roads.
Yeah. So let me explain that. So the density is how many dwelling units can go on a piece of an acre.
On a lot.
On a lot, right? We'll call them acre lots. That's an easier way to kind of visualize it. And, you know, on the Orange County side, it is 1 for 5 acres, 1 for 10 acres. That's rural. That's our rural settlement designation density, unless you're bordering Winter Garden. If you are right up against a municipality, you can do 1 unit on 2 acres. So the smallest. Yeah, that's the smallest. The smallest lot is 2 acres. This new development is anywhere, and they didn't show exactly how this was going to be plotted, which I think was also a big question mark for people. Anywhere from 3 units per acre, 3 units, all the way up to 12 units per acre. So that's like building a giant condo right next to your nice, rural, quiet. Well, I think it would have, at the very least, made people feel better if they saw how that was going to work. Like, is the part that's going to be the higher density, you know, the smaller frontages, where is that going to fall? And they didn't have a plan to present specifics. So, but then when it comes to roads, right, the congestion on those roads, most people are most likely, I'm assuming, because if you actually look at real jobs and where these people are going to work, they're going to have to cut through these rural neighborhoods and use these roads. How does the funding come in? Are the developers of McKinnon Grove going to pay for our roads across the county line? This was a really troubling part of this discussion, because one of the things that we looked into, that I've been really trying to advocate and make sure it's lock solid from the very beginning of this discussion, was no new cut-throughs through that rural settlement, because traffic is like water. Yeah. And yes, without a large economic driver in that area, and we're not going to be employing people at the Rose farm that's there. They're not going to be employed and being able to purchase their $400,000 home in McKinnon Groves, which was, I think, the average price of one of the homes. There's no tech company or something moving in right there. There's no tech company. So yes, those people will be commuting somewhere. And to your point, the developer did say that they would be making improvements to Heartwood Marsh Road. Well, anyone who knows what's going on Heartwood Marsh Road knows that it is so impaired right now that even with vast improvements and not adding the 600 additional homes, that it is really not a functional route for anyone that's commuting. As is. So the question that the Avalon Rural residents have is, then what does that mean to us? Because the next, you go down one and that's right through them. And so there was a conversation I had with a representative from the city of Winter Garden, because he made mention that it would need to go through Phil C. Peters and through the Avalon Rural District. And I was a little bit like, whoa, you're not speaking for, that's a policy decision. And as it turns out, I've been working really hard from this office to protect that from happening. We can talk about decreasing a density so that we don't put that many more cars on the road. We can talk about, employment options on the other side in Lake County, so we know people are commuting in another direction, but the burden, to your point, would absolutely fall on existing residents and existing taxpayers in Orange County, and it already is. So we found out that even on the Lake County side now, in just the rural settlement area, that is Orange County Fire and Rescue that serves them. And that the average response time is 15 minutes. Because it is a rural settlement, and the people that live there understand that that is some of the challenges that they face, is that they are not next to a fire station.
Now add the speeding of the cut through in this nice sleepy road that's probably 25 miles per hour.
Anytime you add cars, you add accidents. Anytime you add humans, you've got emergencies.
Fires.
And so the burden, even though that tax base is solidly going to be in Lake County, there was the emergency services director in Lake County did the presentation and basically said, yes, we've talked to Orange County Fire and Rescue, they would be responding.
And it's like, well, then when does the money
you're paying for it
come in for us to have the capacity, the infrastructure to handle all those cars, all of
we don't.
that?
That's why we're always playing catch up.
And I don't think it's fair, because it almost sounds like this is so common in the environmental movement. You're going to slow down economic progress. And it's like, no, that's not the conversation.
I love
here.
the idea of creative, well-placed housing for all.
Yeah.
I love the idea of a wide array of inventory at different price points. We all understand that as somebody who's just out of school and trying to get my own place, I'm going to want something at this price point. Mm-hmm. If I have been, working and I have a family and I've got kids, or I'm bringing my parents to come live with me, I'm going to be at this price point. We need all those price points. But the thing that I oppose is the putting it down smack in a place where it will negatively impact the character and value of the existing residences. It needs to be near transportation that's already in place, schools, hospitals, emergency services, and the economic drivers, so that people aren't commuting. And the problem, that we have, and I say this again and again, I feel like a broken record, but I think there just needs to be reprogramming. Adding lanes doesn't help, because we just stack. What we need to do is build to the people, so that they can walk, bike, and have transit options, and keep them close to the things they need to do, so they're not commuting.
Yeah.
Adding lanes just adds a new lane for your commute. It doesn't help you with your 27 mile or 15 mile. It's really thinking critically about the infill opportunities. The idea that we allow brand new strip malls to be built after you drive down a street in Orange County and pass 7 empty strip malls.
Yep.
And then we have a new one breaking ground on the far reaches.
And it's like, who asked for this?
Nobody. And even worse, the people that are living next to the now vacant strip mall have what was identified in our Citizen Safety Task Force, an area that's going to be a magnet for crime, an area that's going to be a magnet for businesses that are conducive to crime, pawn shops, liquor stores, because that is how those growth patterns work. So, they're all connected, and having the conversation sometimes when we're looking at just one thing, like, oh, we need another turn lane there, we need another lane there. We've got to stop looking at it like that and back up and look at holistically, like, where actually do we need this, whatever it is.
And it really feels like there's a very siloed approach to every case of development that's coming in, and it's not regional. Like, I don't feel like there's a regional look. And I think you said that was back when Rick Scott started to disassemble a lot of that.
Yeah, there used to be an overall,
like plan.
Counties submitted their comprehensive plans, and the Department of Economic Opportunity basically reviewed those to make sure that as a state there was some cohesion, because you can see how these tensions would arise. As the Orange County representative for District 1 and watching a Lake County meeting, understanding that I needed to be there because this was going to affect my residents, but having absolutely no jurisdictional opportunities to really do anything.
Yeah.
There was really no jurisdictional opportunities, even though my roads, my fire departments, the citizens who voted for me and put me in office to watch over their investments. And so to me, it is a bigger issue. The state of Florida needs to reinstitute those comprehensive plan, I think, calculations and oversight, so that there is some cohesion. I think if they don't, we're going to continue to see areas where people can't afford to live where they're working. So they move somewhere where they have a different growth pattern, where there may be some inventory available, but the quality is different, and then it puts them on the road And so we end up
2-3 hours a day on the road.
Right.
Yeah.
Putting more wear and tear on those roads, requiring more roads, which we all know is bad for everybody, right? It puts more exhaust in the air. It creates more stormwater runoff. So
high levels of pedestrian deaths
so
that we already experience here.
We have to look at it in a global way, or else we're just going to be, it's going to be impossible to undo. And I got a little bit of pushback about my comments that I made at the last BCC when we discussed clear cutting and mass grading and mass grubbing and what the effects are. And I called it, I said, we're going to be building, if we don't stop this and we don't consider what we're doing, we're building a hellscape. And I got a little pushback. There was a resident actually at the Lake County meeting who I know, a band mom from a different school who kind of looked over and said, and we are not living in a hellscape. In a public official.
That sounds out of context.
It was way out of context, because really this wasn't about you living in a hellscape. What it was about was trying to look into the future and plan for a way that we're not doing that we're not paving over every last blade of grass. And I know for a fact that particular resident that had those feelings, and that's fine. I don't mind. I like that everyone gets to come with their own opinions, but it's important for them to know that when the school, Windermere High School, was being built, we struggled with all of this then, and trying to make sure that we were being really fair and the infrastructure that went into that area. And this was something that personally I know impacted that resident. So I just, I don't think we live in a hellscape. I love where we live. This is my home. I would never be sitting here with my pay cut and my 16-hour days if I didn't really, really love Orange County and the citizens. And I feel like it's worth fighting for in the way that we develop is really the best way to go at this, because retrofitting it is not, it's not doable. And if it is doable, it's going to be twice as much.
Yeah. I just don't like that you said they didn't have real plans to present, that everything was kind of ambiguous, but yet they were expecting the Lake County Board to still vote on it, and the people who came out to vocalize their concerns really didn't have a clear picture. They only had that, 3 to 12 units per acre kind of designation to go off of. They didn't see visually what that's going to look like.
Yes,
and
exactly.
I think that's not, that happens even here in Orange County, and I really don't feel comfortable that people are put in a situation where they have to vote on
and I think
that.
the applicant really could have alleviated some anxiety by putting more specifics in. There were a lot of buzzwords used to try to make it look like it was going to be friendly to a more rural setting, like they can be this idea of a buffer being left in place. But there was a really good point that there was nothing in the ordinance that said if there was some kind of a disease that happened with the trees that were there, there's no requirement to actually to replant the buffer, and that the kind of green space and trails that they were going to be putting in could lead to, but it still was going to be very isolated trails within there. So I do think they could have alleviated a lot of the anxiety if they were more clear about the way that layout was going to look. There'll be an age restricted component to the housing, and they didn't really indicate where that was going to be. And that was something that if emergency services is sitting in watching this development, I would want to know, where are we putting, because if they are really far in further away from emergency services or critical care hospitals,
that's a public safety risk.
Yeah, that's a public safety issue. So, a lot to consider. And, we will continue to be here for questions. We will continue to try to articulate that those decisions should take every bit of that thought and dissection. And even if you use the word farmer's market 15 times in a sentence, it doesn't mean that it's going to have the feel of an outdoor market. It just means that they have an interesting rendition for some community space. I love that. I love that they have some flex space to work with, but I think they need to really be clear about what those lot lines are going to look like and how those people are going to be able to get in and out and around.
And I just want to say one really quick. We had an amazing presentation from the city of Winter Garden on how they're putting their roads on a diet, and they're helping to bring in, more small businesses in this mixed-use housing approach when they're revitalizing certain areas in East Winter Garden. And it just it really opened my eyes, because there are ways to help facilitate the flow of traffic while reducing the speed limit and while making things more walkable and bike friendly. And it actually helps. Whereas this design of expanding the roads and making the speed limit faster and just building houses everywhere, it could be done better, and the revenue and the economic drivers could still be in place.
Yeah,
there is a way.
There is a way, and I've said this about my friends in Horizon West and beautiful Horizon West. I will not give up on what was promised to the residents of Horizon West, which was a work here, play here, school here community, and there have been enough chipping away at that plan to really affect some of the things that have been put in. And my job now is to right that ship and make sure that if there's opportunities to give them what they were promised, which was that work here, play here, that we're going to do it. We don't want people to get on I-4 or the 429 or 192 if they don't have to. So yeah, it was a...
Oh, well, one last update before we talk about next week's BCC. You wanted to talk about the Split Oak case that was dropped from Osceola County.
So actually it was, I think, wholly dismissed, right? So what that means, so dropped would be if Osceola County realized that the people of Orange County and their jurisdictional autonomy made a decision to protect Split Oak and decided to withdraw or drop the case. If the person who, the plaintiff, was bringing the case decided to do that, they would have the opportunity to bring it back. And so whenever you hear about a plaintiff withdrawing a case, that doesn't usually, if you're a lawyer, it doesn't really bring you a lot of comfort because it's without prejudice, and they may have an opportunity to bring that back with some different evidence or something new. What happened here was that the judge took a look at the charter review amendment, which was so diligently crafted by really amazing charter review committee members, by volunteer attorneys, by Cliff Shepard, the CRC attorney that was working out of the comptroller's office for the process. And there was it's well written, and what it does is it ensures that Split Oak Forest, which was an investment by the taxpayers, you and the taxpayers of Osceola County, and the state of Florida under the Communities Trust, that this investment isn't just tossed away whenever they need it for whatever. Because there was a kind of a loophole in the way that the original protections were written, and it's actually a little more complex than that. I actually think Split Oak had very, very, very good protections in place. So I think the loophole really was an interpretation of statutory language. But either way, what this charter amendment did was add a layer of protection. And this has been of great interest to residents of Orange County since the first time that there was a risk of them putting a highway through a preserve. And I think as we see this growth, it becomes more and more important for people. Like the interest has not diminished, and I think Osceola County stayed the course in trying to sue Orange County on this amendment, hoping that there would be some legal, foothold, and there really wasn't. This was a very, very by the book process for the amendment, the crafting of the language. It went to the ballot. Voters spoke loud and clear.
Yeah.
And then for Osceola to come in after that and try to have it attacked and set aside, it's disappointing. I hope that this restarts the conversation, because what I understood when I read the dismissal and kind of looked at what was being talked about in the community was that there is still, it still doesn't completely protect Split Oak Forest, because ultimately the Board of County Commissioners, which I'm one of now, has the opportunity to cede some of its power to the Department of Transportation or CFX in Florida Communities Trust. I think the more controversial it is, Florida Communities Trust, through their process, they actually require a different kind of engagement. So we will continue to update you if there's anything else that I hear. I will tell you, having me in this seat shouldn't bring you any great comfort in what could happen down here in our dais, because, as you know from 2 weeks ago, I am sometimes the only no vote in something that looks very, very damaging. I would hope that this would get enough attention from the public, knowing that you cast a ballot and this was on your ballot, that they would show up for it. But stay plugged in. Don't take anything for granted. I am going to continue to be the advocate for what the voters asked for in protecting this piece of property.
Yep.
But we may need to call in the voices of the community, and if that happens, you'll hear from us loud and clear.
Absolutely. We do have a newsletter, NicoleWilson.org. On the homepage, sign up for that newsletter. Our policy aide, Hannah, sends amazing updates, and that's how you can keep a pulse on all these things Commissioner Wilson's talking about.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like I really have a lot more power when I have you with me. And what I mean that is that it's clear to me that the rest of the commissioners sometimes don't listen to the colleagues, but they will listen to the voters, and that's okay. But if that happens where you have seen something that you really feel like, I get it, but you're not sure if anybody else gets it, please feel free to write everybody, to write the newspaper. Editorials work, and to stay in touch with us so that we can reinforce those positions. Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's chat a little bit about the upcoming BCC for those of you who want to have a little sneak peek. Every second and fourth Tuesday, roughly, there's a Board of County Commission meeting.
Yeah, so we do the Board of County Commission meetings. There's the consent agenda in the morning, which usually looks like this, like it's going to take the whole day. Mm-hmm. But because it's voted on in one big chunk, it doesn't happen like that. But it doesn't mean that those things aren't really, really important. And actually, it brings me to something that I forgot to add to our list that I wanted to give the update on. I know we may have mentioned it last week, but it will, I believe, be also talked about tonight in the budget hearing. A consent agenda that was voted, approved in a whole before I came on the board included $2.5 million for the animal shelter, the renewed animal shelter, and it is back in place. So I identified that at the last budget meeting as something that was already approved. There was some confusion about whether or not it was approved, and I think that's because it was on the consent agenda, which means that the board, unless they got into it, they may have missed it. The consent agenda is filled with oftentimes contract renewals. We go through it here though, and Hannah with a fine-tooth comb, because everything in there is consequential, and it's your tax money that's being spent, and it's it's all the things that everyday life is affected by. And one of the things that had come up and gone a couple years ago was this earmarking for the animal shelter. So I'm really happy and really grateful for the county administrator's office for getting it back on track. And we're moving. We want to get that animal shelter done.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear updates on that as it comes forth, and we'll keep you posted. You also said that later on on the agenda, there's some updates from CFX.
Yeah, we'll be getting their, what do they call it? It's something like their transportation plan, their plan. Yeah. So basically, I think it's the prospectus for what's in the works. I know a lot of things will affect District 1. District 1's huge. We've got a lot of growth. So we will be back with specifics. I know I have some residents that we're already in touch with about trying to make sure that we're getting sound barriers in place and that we are really, really, really scrutinizing where that expansion happens so that we're not affecting other people's quality of life. And I know that there are obvious improvements that need to be made in conjunction with the Turnpike Authority and with the Department of Transportation's work on I-4, but these things all interplay. And so anybody that knows where the 408 and the Turnpike crisscross, it's right there in Gotha, where they've struggled with what I believe is a design flaw for a long time. And despite their, extended efforts to try to get to the bottom of it, they've had no good resolution, no good answers from any entity. So when I hear that we're going to be hearing from CFX, or the Turnpike Authority, it's my opportunity to really advocate on behalf of the Gotha residents. That is a historic area. Nearling Gardens is there, which you talk about a treasure both naturally and historically. And the waterways there have already been so degraded by the impacts of the increasing transportation corridor there. The 408 extension or ramp that happened right there by Gotha was, if you look at the timeline, it's really hard not to see that this was really
directly correlated, it feels like, because Gotha is kind of nestled in this basin, which I've learned so much about how natural topography and where we develop can really capture and retain water, that if we don't quantify it adequately when we're doing something like putting in a toll road, it could flood people out of their homes. This has flooded people out of their homes.
But
then it's like, whose fault is it?
And that's the issue. And it was really, really devastating for me getting here and bringing in residents who experience this, knowing that we have some stake in this, because there are county roads in that area, and we should be able to try to help get into the bottom of it. And we just, dead end after dead end after dead end right here in this building. And so I will continue to, wear that advocate hat for the residents of Gotha until we get to the bottom of it, because it's a beautiful historic place that should be protected and is protected in the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, so stay plugged in on that. We'll be sending updates. Email district1@ocfl.net if you have any questions. Please watch the BCC. And so let's talk a little bit about staff-initiated comp plan amendment, which is making a rural settlement into low density. So it just sounds like, right now, it sounds like land is ripe for the picking, and people are trying to
and I don't know anything about this yet.
Grow.
Yeah, because this is for next week. So we're going to be getting more information. It's not in District 1, so don't. Yeah, I don't want my District 1 rural settlements.
But these conversations are hitting us like a wave every week.
And I am always concerned, because we've seen it happen here, even though this is not a court of law, so precedent shouldn't be used in any determinations here. It does get used. So once something happens in the development process, I hear later on them say, well, this is how we treated it here, this is how we should treat it here. But really, every land use case should be evaluated separately and independently of previous land use cases, because there's cumulative effects.
Yeah.
Right? Like, even if you think about wetland impacts, they should continue to magnify, because we know that a tenth of an acre doesn't sound like a lot, but if you have a tenth of an acre every 2 weeks, and the way you're justifying that tenth of an acre is by saying, well, we did it 2 weeks ago, then we are disregarding a cumulative effect. So that one's not in our district. We'll keep an eye on it, though, because I always want to make sure that language, if it goes through, that it doesn't negatively impact you all.
Yeah, and District 1 is so unique. If you look at the map, there's so much bodies of water that are supposed to be a carbon sequestration, filtration area.
Yeah.
And you see all these roads and all these developments and all this impermeable surfaces that are just taking petrochemicals and putting them into these waterways. And, how is that affecting other counties' water quality
downstream? So if you look at the way that Orange County and the water runs, Florida is a river, the sea of grass, right? And when you look at the Butler chain, it ends up in the Kissimmee River, which ends up in the Everglades. And we have a responsibility from top to bottom. And I know the people that live on the Butler chain, they feel the same way. It is a gem, and they love it and they protect it, but we do need to be very proactive. And I think one of the things that we'll probably round back to, Lee, is the fertilizer ordinance, because if you look at the Butler chain and how it has changed over the years, there hasn't been increasing septic. There's not an area where I would say the development of when it happened, that the septic may be having. It is runoff. We are dealing with runoff issues. And, as much as we love our green lawns, they are killing our lakes. So we have to find Florida-friendly, fertilizer-free or low fertilizer, nutrient type landscaping if we really want to protect those waterways. And that includes people who are not directly on the water. We had the opportunity to go out and put drain covers on at Big Sand Lake. And it was interesting to talk to people in the neighborhood that didn't realize that what went into those culverts went out on the lake that they let their kids jump into and they water ski on.
Yeah.
So if you're letting your grass clippings with all the fertilizer and pesticide on it go down those culverts, down the drains, the water runoff during stormy weather, which is right now, it's going straight into the place where you're letting your kids get up on skis on Saturday.
Yeah.
So.
And I you just said that you're stronger when you have the public come out and speak. Well, it shouldn't have to be that, in order to get these conversations to be had. We shouldn't have, I'm looking at an article right now, 750 manatees died this year alone, and that's 10% of their population.
It's devastating.
But I haven't heard anything internally here about what blood of these manatees are on our hands based on our policies and what we're regulating and what we're doing to make sure that we're not spraying or doing all these things. I haven't heard these conversations, and we keep asking.
Well, I will tell you, I think I think that one in particular goes back to what we're dumping on the ground. And so I think understanding that we're not going to be we can't sit around and wait for the state because they don't really care, right? So we can't wait for the state. We can't wait. We have to do that. And when I say we, I mean citizens who care, and even HOAs and community leaders, community associations, anybody who cares. Because really those decisions, if I can't get the attention of the people here in local government and you can't get the attention of our state, then maybe we'll just say, hey, you guys on this street, knowing that it goes straight out there to Lake Sheen, can we quit with the fertilizer during rainy season? And
herbicides and
Can we, and then just start there, right? So you can be your own street champion and really just set a standard, maybe help educate others about what's happening in the rainy season, that we are killing our own lakes with those nutrient loads. And that is exactly what you're seeing with the manatees, because they're losing their food source. They're literally starving to death because of the things that we are dumping to try to keep weeds out of your yard.
Yep.
And that's just, it's tragic.
And when I say, like, what is it going to take? Is it going to take to get that public pressure and that pressure on a legislative level, a death of a child, a death of, like, having amoebas, a large death?
We've done that.
I mean, we have seen that, but
like,
how bad does it have to get before?
Blue-green algae was killing people's pets all over Florida a couple years ago, and it did not make a difference.
I don't want it to have to get there.
I agree with you, but I think I have, it's funny because the longer I'm here, the more libertarian I sound, because I think it's got to be us. I think it's got to be us. I think because I watch sometimes right here in this building, things that we have on the books. We have great language about protecting trees in our, do you think we do it? I don't know. Take a drive. Tell me what you think. So I think it's got to be us.
Not after that mass grading PSP that was on the last
so I think it's on. So I think it's on us. No, don't get me wrong. If we can get those things passed and in place and they're lock solid, and we have an enforcement arm that really keeps us protecting our natural resources, because the problem we have in Florida isn't just some of the exploitation or mistreatment by residents. We also have visitors that don't understand that we have a very fragile environment. So, having those laws in place is really, really important. But I think it also just comes down to us.
Yep.
And so, going forward, if you have ideas about your HOA or your community association or your civic group, I don't know, there's so many really wonderful civic groups I get to speak to out there. And you think, oh, you know what, this would be a really cool project, would be going, to different communities to talk about doing voluntary fertilizer
blackout periods.
Blackout periods. Then let's just do it. And I can quit beating my head against a wall here at the county trying to get a fertilizer ordinance updated.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they look at me like I'm a pest. But you know what? Your property value, if you're on the lake or you live in any of these areas that really, because of their lakes, are high value, it affects the bottom. Even if you don't care about it for the environment, it will affect your property value. So, I think of all of those things in every decision that I make, and I want to make sure that if you have an idea, like I love the idea when we found out that the Realtors Association jumped in to try to get a ballot amendment passed to prevent the rating of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Because I'm like, well, that makes sense. This affects their business. They need housing inventory. They pulled out of that. They were no longer pursuing that. But it made me think, you know what? This really is a consumer issue when you consider what will happen to property values when we have to post warnings that people can't get into our bodies of water that have been traditionally where people come and vacation, where people come and buy really expensive properties. So,
and the water can't sue.
No, and so I'm trying. Well,
not for long.
So I'm trying to appeal. I'm trying to appeal to the to everybody's sense of not just that stewardship, but also that sense of protection of their assets.
Yeah. Final comment before we have to wrap up. FEMA floodplain identification coming up here on the agenda. If you wanted to share our language updates.
Yeah, I will actually also try to see if we can get some of the language, I think, in a kind of a snapshot form to share on social media, because I think it's a little bit confusing to look at in the ordinance. But basically, Orange County is setting itself back into the same FEMA standards that it needs to be to sort of stabilize some of the homeowners insurance policies that are out there, and to provide what's needed for some discounts under the FEMA's flood protection plans. And I think I've had some conversations with residents. The thing that's really important to remember with this is that the work we're doing on this ordinance to bring that floodplain language into consistency with FEMA, it does not affect anybody in a municipality. So if you're in Winter Garden, if you're in Ocoee, I think Orlando's already done this. So I'm not speaking for Orlando, and I'm not positive about where the other municipalities are, but they're not all the same. So I have friends that are Orange County residents, but also live in town limits somewhere, who said, oh wait, but I just noticed that this isn't for you. This is unincorporated Orange County residents, and the way that those floodplains are identified for your homeowner's insurance.
Absolutely. Real quick, just so you know, we did an awesome Williamsburg board meeting that is recorded and put on the YouTube and on NicoleWilson.org.
Yeah, thank you to everybody that came out for that.
Thank you,
from the
staff
Williamsburg
and
community.
citizens.
I love you guys, and I really feel grateful to have you as part of the district. And I am always so amazed at the incredible diversity of Williamsburg, and it's the best location. I love that area. And I want to also thank all the staff that came out and participated. I want to thank people from the airport. We had the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority out there making or answering some questions. We had the Sheriff's Department came. And so it was really a collaborative effort, and I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Awesome. And then coming up, so on the 14th, we have a Big Sand Lake Advisory Board meeting for those of you who want to come and listen to the board, make comments. But then on the 20th, there's a Big Sand Lake community meeting that's going to be happening. You can see all of those events at NicoleWilson.org or on this Facebook event page. And lastly, please join us again next week at Thursday virtual office hours.
Yeah, and you don't have to wait. This is our kind of open time, but you don't have to wait. If you want to call or email, we're here. And we appreciate really all that interaction. So thank you, thank you.
And happy belated birthday.
Thank you. 28. Can you believe it?
There is a question?
20th anniversary of 9/11 on Saturday.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you for reminding us.
I feel horrible. That really actually needed to be something that I covered right away, and I apologize. We won't forget that day. Try to always keep in your hearts and minds the Americans that were lost that day, the people that continue to be impacted. I know that there are still people that were rescuers, first responders that are suffering, that are still healing. Can you believe that? All these years later. I have to give a shout out to my brother, who is a firefighter, and I'm going to try to get choked up. He is participating right now in the Brotherhood Ride to honor the victims of 9/11 and the firefighter families. And he's riding his bike, has ridden from South Florida with a group of first responder firefighters and law enforcement officers from all over, and they're riding their bikes. They've been on the road now every single day from South Florida into the site of the World Trade Center, where they will be coming in on September 11th.
Oh my
to
goodness.
honor their brothers. It's the Brotherhood Ride because they're the brothers in red and brothers in blue. And we just need to really remember that when we run out of a building like that, they're running in.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful for them. I'm grateful to be an American. And I want you to also remember that we went through a time right after that where we were really one. Like, we had a moment in history where, because there was truly a threat, not a made-up YouTube threat, not a real threat. A real threat. We embraced each other, and we held each other up, and we have to really remember that. And so when I say don't forget 9/11, I mean it in the way that you treat people every single day.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much, and please hug your loved ones
Yes.
and be safe out there with COVID right now. And
Thank
I
a
hope you
first
have a
responder
wonderful
for everything
weekend.
they do all the time.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Happy Thursday.